In this video, I'm going to talk about the elusive double gateway game and what it means to you. So, I've talked about gateway games in the past. For those of you that don't know what a gateway game is, I'll explain it, but if you just want to watch another video about what I mean, pachow. But a gateway game, in very quick terms, is a game that sort of bridges the gap, usually between a board game and a miniatures game. It is the game that acts as a gateway into getting people, say, from board gaming and introducing them to tabletop wargaming. It brings across, in a board gamey style package, basically a lot of the ideas that we think of when we think about tabletop wargames. Range, positionality, line of sight, cover, stuff like that. Games like, Zombicide. It's a board game, sold a zillion copies, and that's great. But if you look at it really down to, it's teaching people about playing a war game, kind of. You know, you're moving within these squares, and there's things that are happening, and it's not tape measure and a lot of six-siders necessarily, and that kind of thing. But it's still teaching them about miniatures that aren't just placeholder pieces. These are actually, this is a character, that's a zombie. We have to figure out how far away they are. Can I shoot him? Not, that kind of stuff. All that stuff is usually something that you find in a gateway game. But I've started to notice a trend in different types of gateway games where they're almost kind of, for lack of a better term, double dipping, because they're not only just a gateway game that teaches, say, board game type folks how to play kind of like a very, very simple war game, they also are targeting people who maybe aren't necessarily board game folks, but you're still trying to target them and bring them in as war gamers. What am I talking about? What I'm talking about generally are licensed games. So a licensed gateway game. Okay, so that's where the double dip comes in. It's a game that can bring board gamers over to wargaming to some degree, but it can also bring, say, comic book fans over to potentially into wargaming because they like the comic book, or potentially because they like the movie, or they like the TV show, or the video game even. That's almost like a really weird kind of like, it's not exactly a triple gateway. I don't know what you would call that, but when you take a video game and turn it into a kind of gateway game, board game into war game, it's convoluted at best, but I think that there's something to be said for bringing in people who are interested in that kind of property, and also people who are interested in, board gaming in general, and squishing them all together into potentially a brand new wargamer. So examples would be good. This really heavy box here is Dark Souls, they call it the board game, but I would call it the gateway game, just because semantics. This game is made by Steamforged, and it is very much like the video game. Now, I've never played the video game, but I've watched some of it on YouTube and things like that, and I'll show you how much this is very much like the video game, because when you open the box, you take off the big giant lid, you just get this thing on the top that just says, "You died." Now, if you've ever played the video game, you've seen this a couple of thousand times, just the "you died." So, I kind of enjoy that sense of humor, but this game comes with big, really nicely detailed miniatures, and it is designed to be like, almost like a micro skirmish game. It is designed so that you're playing on a board, so it's a little board gamey, but you're also using miniatures and trying to have a combat. It's not just like, oh, this miniature I use to, show that I'm taking over France or whatever. Like when you're playing a game of, say, Axis and Allies and you move the tank into Germany, you're not playing a miniatures game. You're just like, I did this. But it's, you know what I'm saying? It's a difference between a board game with little miniatures versus a gateway game where it's board game-ish but has miniature-like qualities. This one has got, like I said, big cool miniatures, but it's played in small boards, so it's a little bit more approachable to your average person. Plus, if they like the video game, they're really going to like the miniatures and the style and all that kind of stuff. And you can hopefully pull from two different parts and try to get new people into wargaming. When I was a kid, I wasn't into a lot of comic books, but there were some that I really enjoyed. If you're old enough, you will probably remember the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Now, if you're really old like me, you'll remember them back before they were like a Saturday morning cartoon show. But back when they were a black and white kind of real sort of sketchy art style, almost like a crime comic, but obviously with the silliness of, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Anyway, there's this new game from IDW called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shadows of the Past. And the art style is close to the original kind of 1984 roughly era of the comic books. Obviously, it's in color. The original, a little unknown fact, when the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles first started, they didn't have different colored bandanas so you could tell who they were. They all wore red bandanas, and you had to figure it out by either the weapons that they were holding or just by context. But then, when they started putting it into bed sheets and lunchboxes and, Saturday morning cartoons and doing all that stuff, they kind of had to figure out a way to make them a little more approachable so people could remember who was who. So that's why they did the color change. Anyway, this is also, again, another kind of gateway style game. Again, very small skirmish. Comes with, something like, 45 different miniatures. Again, big boxes, very large boxes. A comic book, which I enjoy. Then the big honkin' rule book. And then there's a lot of boards and a lot of figures. Lots and lots of parts. Lots and lots of parts seems to also be sort of par for the course in a gateway game, because people who love board games, the ones that sell really well these days, have tons of parts. Very well designed, full color printing kind of shenanigans like that. And so if you can kind of get that feature and that big thickness out of the box, and then also be like, but it's like a tiny little skirmish game that's taking place on a street tile, here in New York or whatever, and have battles between Foot Clan and all that kind of junk. That sort of thing, you can kind of pawn off and go, we're playing a board game. We're not playing a war game. It's a board game. And that's the gateway part. And if the person is interested in, the Turtles in general, because they're a big fan of the, cartoon, I guess, or better yet, the comic, then again, you've got them one way or the other, and that's the double part of the double gateway game. This last example is, again, something that I've got here in the basement, and it's also based off a comic book, although you may think of it as being based off of a TV show. But again, it started as a comic book. This is The Walking Dead All-Out War from Mantic Games, and this starts to straddle the fence a little bit more on the miniature game side, in my opinion. Still quite approachable, still very double gateway in that it's for people who, are interested in the comic or technically the TV show. The things are a little interchangeable. If you're a super huge fan of the comic, you're going to tell me I'm wrong on that, and that's what the comments below are for. If you're a super huge fan of the TV show, you might not really pay attention to the comic, but you still like the concept and zombies and all that jazz and Rick Grimes and all that. But again, a whole bunch of different models and things like that. Not really the boards in here. That's why this one becomes a little bit more like a war game. Like, you kind of need to have sort of something to play on to some degree. Because, there's nothing particularly in here that looks like an actual board to play on. So this is still a simpler kind of skirmish style, all-in-one sort of game, but you do need a little bit of terrain. You do need maybe something to play on that looks at least a little bit like a field, or maybe, like a city street or something along those lines. But still a really good game, great models, and I don't know, all these different types of games are interesting to me because I like the concept of them bringing more people into wargaming. A lot of these you don't even necessarily have to paint. I would like to, obviously. If you've got time, it's always a good idea to try to go that direction, because most of these models, especially in this box, don't have to be, in pretty much most of these boxes, they don't have to be built. They're kind of one-piece type models. So a quick prime and some quick paint is a very doable thing for someone, interested in these games. That all being said, the turtles are green in that, so they're easy to differentiate from the Foot Clan and all that kind of stuff, and you can get away without having to do that. In this, everybody's kind of gray, so you're going to maybe want to at least try to do something to differentiate. It's a little bit harder to see the difference between the zombies and the non-zombies, survivors, some would call them, in this game. But so these types of games give you the benefit, if you are the person trying to teach somebody new about wargaming, they give you the benefit of being able to say, okay, cool, You like comic books? Do you like the turtles? Oh, you do. Okay, cool. I have this game that's about turtles. Or do you like zombies, and you like the TV show Walking Dead or the comic The Walking Dead? Boom, we've got you covered there. And Dark Souls. You like video games? Do you like really hard video games that are kind of got like a bit of a cult following? Here you go. Look at these models. They're really huge and awesome. These types of things can help you if you are like me trying to get more people into tabletop wargaming. I think it's really important to try to get more people into tabletop wargaming. I think that not only is it just better for the overall industry, it gives us more opponents to play against, obviously, but I really think that if you can get somebody into the hobby, and I've said this a whole bunch of times before, if you can get somebody into the hobby aspect of it, they can find something kind of new to do with their time. Like I've said before, it's very meditative. At least I find it to be. Your thoughts may be different. But I find it to be something that I'm really glad to be able to sit down and do, and to help me kind of calm me down after a long day of whatever my long day may have been. So these are just the 3 that I happen to have laying around here in the basement, actually. And that I was able to kind of come up with sort of at short notice to figure out what I was going to talk about in this video when I came up with the concept of the double gateway game. I would like to know, and I think if you're interested and you don't have any ideas for a double gateway game, you could look in the comments and see stuff that other people have put in there about what they believe to be also a double gateway game. It's a game that is sort of that gateway between board game and miniature game, but also has some other hook, usually another type of licensed property, whether it's a movie or a comic book or a video game or TV show or anything like that. Put any of those concepts down into the comments below so that other people who are interested, maybe they don't like the look of any of these 3 that I've shown, and they'd like to find something else to be that double gateway to really start to pull some of their friends and family into wargaming. Maybe they can find some good suggestions from what you might put down below. I love the concept of gateway games, double gateway games, maybe doubly so. But let me know what you think, because I would like to see more people, hopefully you want to see more people get into this hobby as well. And I always believe that these types of games can really help us to sort of get to that area and get more people involved in tabletop wargaming.